I had a resume probably, a year and a half before I actually got out. And I just kind of advocated for myself by reaching out to different organizations. I was applying for positions I couldn't take, but I knew I qualified for it, just to kind of get some feedback on how to tweak my resume or just the interviewing process.
Welcome everybody once again. We are back and we are here with Mr. Romaine Byrd doing a full interview, talking about his military retirement, his transition, and his life up to this point. So welcome to the show, even though we've had you on before, but welcome again to the show. Thank you for coming back and doing this.
Absolutely.
And let me just start off with a very left turn question that's kind of out in the wild, but can you maybe think back to your time in uniform before you got out, and maybe your morning routine while you were in uniform versus what your morning routine kind of morphed into once you got out of uniform, and maybe a couple years later, what that looks like, maybe the first 30 to 60 minutes of your day?
Oh, wow. Okay. Yep. So the last few years, actually, I served in the military, the Army, as an Army recruiter for like the last 8-9 years of my military career. So it was very difficult. A lot of my mornings were basically everything was kind of routine. I would just get up every morning, get to the office 7:30, 8, and begin my day with just kind of pre-planning, coming up with lists, call lists, and just kind of getting to the point to where once the high school started, I would be out on the road, just kind of hustle and bustle, just trying to, make that daily grind mission. There were really long days. Some weeks I know we worked 75 to 80 hours a week. And it was just kind of one of those things where it was really tedious, and it was to the point where everybody was burned out. Now that I am retired, I'm to a point where now, so that rat race of chasing people and getting to work on time, those days are over. It was a hard adjustment at first. Even now, I still find it difficult actually, just kind of slowing down and just taking my time, but just enjoying life. So now things are a little different. So the only thing I'm doing now is, once I get my daughter off to school and just kind of get situated, I mean, it is definitely a really slower pace. I take things as they come, not, rushing to get everything done as I used to. So it's definitely different. Definitely a lot more relaxed environment now.
I do have a quick question for you, Romaine. When you retired, did you feel like you needed to get into another job right off the bat? Or did you feel like, you could take some time off? And did you take time off if that was the case?
Yeah, man, I didn't take any time off. I started working maybe 7 or 8 months before I actually retired. Because I didn't know what my next move was going to be, and I was so much of it in a panic that I wanted to ensure that I had the right things I needed to continue to take care of my family. So I did start my transition maybe 2 years before I actually got out. With the help of our organization, Hire Heroes USA, I mean, it actually did help me land some pretty meaningful employment. So yeah, no, I didn't take any time off.
All right. And then I understand the whole worry thing, because I was in the same boat, right? Like, you feel like, what's going to be the
Absolutely.
next step? How am I going to provide for my family? Things like that, right? So I completely understand that. And then, funny enough, you went from getting help from Hire Heroes USA to actually, helping them out by being, one of their employees. So that's pretty
Absolutely.
cool. That's pretty awesome. I myself was looking into something like that, but I kind of found a different route a little bit. But yeah, I'm there with you, man. I had a feeling like, what's my next step? How am I going to provide? Where are we going to move? Was that like a big thought for you as well? Like, where did you retire from or out of?
So it's weird, man, because all right, so a little backstory. So I initially joined back in 95.
Yeah.
And I did 6 years as a mechanic, which I hated, right? So I got out.
Mm-hmm.
No plan, no direction. I transitioned out in Baumholder, Germany, which was one of the worst mistakes ever, because it didn't give me the chance to actually, research and kind of set any ground roots.
Right.
So within a few months, maybe a year, I was back in the military. So as I got closer to my transitioning point this time, I I had a really detailed plan. So I asked them to transition me or assign me to a duty station close to where I wanted to live, which was outside the Atlanta area.
Hmm.
And I just kind of made new contacts and friends and just kind of networked my way into a new position after I got out. So it was all pre-planned. It was definitely all pre-planned.
No, that's awesome, man. Because I think that's a big issue, and at least the things that I encountered too from talking to other people who are transitioning out is, where am I going to live? And there's a lot that goes into that, right? Like, does your state that you're considering, exempt you from military, taxes on your retired pay?
Got it.
What are the benefits in said state, things like that. So I think it's strategically, I think it's important to kind of look at your career and then make your last move. If you have any like play in that, if you have any say in where you're going to go, make your last move near where you're going to be living. I think that's
Absolutely.
strategically, that's super important, because that way you can plant roots,
Yeah.
you can make networks, within that area, start looking at homes, things like that. So no, I think you did it right, man. I think you did it right.
Yeah. Well, let me add to that. I think a lot of
Yeah,
veterans don't know that, you do get one last retirement move. So,
that's right.
you want to make that move a great move. So you don't want to just, hey, I'm going back to my home state. You really want to do your research to find out where it is you want to go, because those moves can be costly. I
Yeah.
think from Augusta, Georgia to Atlanta, I think my move was about almost $6,000. So imagine
Yeah.
if you decide to go to, Washington State. So it's really important that you do your research and just make sure you have that decision finalized before you make that move. So
That's right. And even I'll just again caveat off that, right? I can't let it go. I can't let it go. I'll caveat off that. Even after retirement, like I called up because I'm retired already as of last month, and then I still rate one more move. I called up the DMO, the moving section, on the base where I retired from, nearby, right up the road, and I told them, hey, look, I'm recently retired. Do I still rate one more move? And they said, yes, as long as it's within 1 year, but I can get that waived for another year. So
yeah,
that's awesome too, because I didn't know that. I figured, before doing my research, I figured, man, we're gonna have to pay out of pocket for this move. I was gonna rent a U-Haul,
yeah,
but there's no need to do that. Even
yeah,
after you're retired, you still rate that final move. Yeah, that's good.
absolutely. And
Good
you're
info.
good up to 5 years on that as well. So
Oh,
you are good
really?
up to
Oh
five
man,
years on that move.
they told me
Absolutely.
1 year. I'm
Yes,
gonna have
up
to
to
talk to
five
these
years,
guys.
man. Yeah, up to 5 years
All right.
You
Yeah, I'm
just
gonna,
got to
I'm
go
gonna write
back
that
in and
down.
remind them, and yeah, you just got to go
Yeah.
back and remind them like every year before the
every year.
anniversary of that year.
Yep. And the weird
Let
part
them
about
know.
it, they won't send you a reminder either. So you gotta
Nah,
put it in your
Oh
phone. You
yeah.
gotta write it down, something, but they will not
Oh,
remind
absolutely.
you.
That's a big part of the whole thing, right? Is like you need to learn how to not you specifically, but folks who are getting out, they need to learn how to advocate for themselves, because the
Absolutely,
government is once you leave the uniform, the government is not going to track your stuff. That is completely
absolutely
up
not.
to you. That's what I've learned. So yeah, definitely advocate for yourself. It's not about they're not going to take care of you. You need to take care of
No,
yourself and keep all that stuff in
facts.
your calendar. Exactly. 100%.
no. It's the same thing you got to do when you're trying to keep track of your ratings and your annual reviews and stuff like that. Like you need to
Yeah,
write stuff down. You're in charge of your career and you're in charge of
absolutely.
your retirement. Same way. I wanted to step back a little bit and find out where you were at. Like if you could give us the time and the place where you were at before you came in, and maybe like the mental mind state you were in, the environment you might have been in, and what that trigger was that allowed you to then say, okay, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and raise my right hand. I'm going to go ahead and sign up for the military and join. Can you place us in that specific spot, or maybe within a short range of a month or two?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up Southwest Georgia, a small town called Pelham, Georgia.
Mhm.
And I was put in a position where I had to join. I really had no option. Mom passed when I was super young. I had three younger sisters. Really had no connection with my dad. Um, and I knew I wanted to get out of my hometown. I didn't know how. I didn't know what. And I was at a high school recruiting table, and a recruiter came up and was like, "Hey, what do you see yourself in 5 years from now?" And I was like, I mean, I really couldn't answer that question. You know, you talked to me and convinced me that the military was like one of the things that I needed. Only thing I heard was food, a paycheck, and a place to sleep. and I didn't care, what job he gave me. So um, I enlisted as a mechanic, and I totally hated it. Like I sucked at it so bad. Um, and like I said, I got to a point where I wanted to leave, but I just didn't know what direction I was going in because it wasn't the service I was providing. It was the fact that I was a mechanic, and it's something I didn't want to do. So um, that's what led up to me actually enlisting, being in a position to where I had no other option. Um, Once I got in and actually figured out what it was about, then the service of country actually started kicking in. But initially, it was self preservation. I just wanted to kind of you know be able to take care of myself. So
And then after that, as far as jumping forward to your retirement, can you maybe take us to, and we may have discussed this in our other interview that we did with you, but I just want to recap it for folks out there. Can you take us to the point where you actually mentally made the choice to decide to get out of the military and retire out of the military? What kind of things were going on, and what was the impetus of that, and kind of the spark for that? And then from that point that you made that decision, like, can you maybe walk us down the path of the steps that you
got
started
it.
to take towards your retirement?
Got it. So I knew maybe it was 2014, 2015. I knew I was done. I had got to a point in my career where I was pretty stagnant. I had made E7 roughly about 8, 9 years in the military. And I got to a point where I couldn't progress. The more you did in the military, as far as a recruiter, the more they expected. So there was no upper mobility for a person of what I was doing. And it just got to a point where I just got tired of it. It was affecting my home life. I wasn't sleeping. I was kind of depressed. I was moody. I was irritable. And it was just, I knew I couldn't continue to do it. So right about that 16-year mark, 18-year mark, I started planning my exit strategy. I did reach out to Hire Heroes USA. I had a resume probably, a year and a half before I actually got out. And I just kind of advocated for myself by reaching out to different organizations. I was applying for positions I knew I couldn't take, but I knew I qualified for, just to kind of get some feedback on how to tweak my resume or just the interviewing process. And yeah, I just made the transition. I mean, it was planned.
That's good because a lot of folks don't make that decision until too late, right? I'll give you a quick example. I knew of a gentleman who was leaving the Marine Corps, and it must have been just a few months before his actual end of active service date. And he mentioned to me, he's like, "Hey, I had no idea I had to do this TAPS class, right? Like this transition readiness class." He's like, "Yeah, I don't have anything signed or set up." I'm like, "Where have you been, man? Like that's a requirement, like they give you like the checkout sheet, like what have you been doing this whole time?" So yeah, a lot of folks don't plan that ahead, like I planned mine just about the same time. Like I knew about 15 years in that I was like, okay, well, I looked at the upward progress and figured, there might not be too much upward progress because I just don't want to do or go certain places, right? So based on that, I know that I was going to be limited. And at that point, I kind of made my decision like, hey, what's best for me and my family is, can I cut ties at 20 years? Because that's, it's an audible thing. You did 20 years in the military. Not a lot of people can say that. And then, you figure out your way after that. Right. But yeah, right around 5 years to 3 years out from that is when you actually have to make your decision, man, because it really goes by fast. And there's a ton. I mean, firsthand working for Hire Heroes USA, you probably get calls all the time. There is a ton. Yeah. There's a whole timeline that needs to be hit like 180 days out, 2 years out even.
Got it.
So a lot of folks don't realize it until it's too late. They're like, damn, I got to do all this. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the military does a really poor job. And I've only served in the Army, but I think as a whole, the military does a really awful job out of preparing individuals for the civilian world. For the military, for the Army, it was all beans and bullets. Like you knew how to go out and actually go to combat and be successful, but you don't know how to make that transition. And I don't think they allowed you the right amount of time to make that transition. So again, with my transitioning out, they were still calling me to do this. Hey, and it was just to the point where I had to decide, hey, I'm done. I'm out. But as long as you continue to put forth the effort to work with the military, they're going to drag you as long as they can. So you have to take care of yourself. You have to advocate for yourself. So,
Was there any way that you were able to navigate that and be able to like set those boundaries with your command or with your leadership when you were getting to the point of transitioning out, going through TAP and all that stuff? Did you actually sit down with your command and talk to them, or how did you navigate those waters as far as taking the time to do the things you needed to do for your transition, for your retirement, and getting prepared for your civilian life? Or did that just kind of organically happen and you just kind of took it punch by punch?
no, man, I'll be honest. Those were very treacherous waters, and I couldn't swim. So that's how bad it was. But I was willing to drown for that purpose. Again, like I made a lot of people upset. I made a lot of people mad, but I knew what I had faced initially when I got out, and I was not going to go through that. So I was threatened a few times to be demoted in rank. Hey, you must show up here at this event, and I was like, I'm not doing that. You know, I'm literally less than a year out. I need to start preparing. But yeah, it wasn't good. So I made a few enemies leaving, but it was okay. It kind of circled that whole thing around it to put everything in perspective. The guys that were in those positions that were saying, hey, you can't do this. Now they're starting to transition out. And guess who's hitting me on LinkedIn? Guess who's reaching out to me? Hey, Romaine, I need help with my transition. It's like, okay, well, let me help you because you didn't help me, but I'm going to help you.
It's funny how that circles around, right? It's funny how that circles around.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, that's when they need help, that's when they reach out, right? So
absolutely.
No, yeah, that's funny you mentioned that. That's good. That's good.
I did want to ask you a kind of an oddball question, but I think it kind of is within the realms of what we're talking about. And as far as when you were getting out, prior to getting out of the service, did you create any kind of smart book or maybe like a shared folder or anything of all like the knowledge that you've been accumulating over the years, or even in just that position in that time in that position that you were able to then pass off? And if you did, what did that look like?
I honestly did not. Everything I've been doing or all the information I've been received has just been through, trial and error. What worked for myself, what didn't work, as well as my friends, my other battle buddies that were getting out. So, we do share ideas. Even when it came down to my VA rating, they would tell me what steps to take, what I need to do, how to get treated for this. And we just kind of kept, just a mental note of what we did. But I never wrote anything down. So, I mean, which is a good idea. I may do that.
Well, I mean, bringing it forward to today, like now you work in an organization where you're basically creating the smart book every single day when you're talking
Absolutely.
to transitioning members.
Absolutely. We have our policies and we have our guidelines, which I think with the organization I'm working in, they've done so much extensive research that is, I mean, they've done a really good job out of nailing everything piece by piece and step by step. So I do take my own personal challenges once I retired with the professional knowledge I've gained from them. And we've created a really great game plan for anybody transitioning out. So
yeah, you got to help these lost ones, man, because there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Half the time, when they would ask questions, and that's one thing that when I was sitting in that TRS class, one question that I did not hear anybody ask, and I don't know why, because after the fact, I was like, yeah, I wish I would have asked this question: is when exactly does like your retirement pay hit? It's like a month after. Sometimes it could be delayed. It all depends on how fast the government works. But yeah, there's questions that are unanswered and even unasked. And 5 days in TRS that the military gives you to transition out is not enough. A week in TRS. That's why, I'm glad that places like Hire Heroes USA comes into play and, they can help out, because I know I've used your services before, Hire Heroes USA, and got my resume written. Things that, the military, like you mentioned, the Army is all about beans and bullets, right? Their job, their mission, same as the Marine Corps, their job and their mission is to, fight wars and win battles, so, but the idea is, when you have a service member that has served in your organization, you want to give the community, the civilian community, a good product on the way out. So I
Absolutely.
think it could be done better. 5 days is definitely not enough. I completely agree with
Yeah,
that.
it's definitely checking the block. I mean,
Oh yeah,
you can't ask what you don't know. So if you don't
that's
That's
right.
right.
think to ask that question, I mean,
Right. Yeah.
again, I think the transitioning process with leaving the military is just all about checking the block. Um, there's no set standard or procedure. And if you think about it, they don't. None of the information is like tracked. Like once you leave outside those gates, there's no other contact. Our
Right.
organization, we track everything. Everything is tallied up and quantifiable. So we don't just say, hey, look, good luck on your life, and we hear from you, next time. We continue to make phone calls to make sure everything
Yeah.
is happening and you're hitting the right spot. So
And that's 100% appreciated because some of these folks don't know, or they're losing their way after, and they need to
mhm,
hear from somebody.
absolutely,
So that's appreciated 100%.
Yeah. So along those lines, I'm going to put you in a hypothetical situation and see what it looks like. If you were given the opportunity, let's say, to stand in front of a TAP group, maybe you're on day one of that TAP week, and they give you like 30 minutes, 20 minutes to give a short speech or a short talk to the group. And it could be retirees, it could be people just getting out after a couple of years of military service. There's a whole gamut. It may be mixed services, Army and Marines and Navy and other people. What would that talk like? What would your thesis of that talk look like? And what would be a couple of talking points you might want to hit on,
that's great.
knowing
Okay,
now what you
yeah.
know now versus what you knew before?
First thing I would tell you is, or tell them, is to forget everything or attempt to forget everything they've been indoctrinated in for the past, you know, 20 plus years, because it doesn't work out here in the civilian world. What we are taught as being professionals is considered a toxic work environment in 2024, right? Um, I think I mentioned my very first interview. I'm sitting at position of attention and I'm sounding off with the answer, and it didn't work. Um, so I would ask that just kind of, reevaluate your life, find out who you want to be, forget who you are or who you were, and start fresh. And I think the hardest thing for us to do as veterans is to find that secondary identification. You want to continue to be who you were because everybody respect you. They knew who you were. Um, and it's scary to kind of leave that environment to a new world where nobody knows you, nobody cares. So you have to forget who you are, and find that secondary identification. Second thing I would tell a person that's transitioning out is to take time to take care of yourself. The military is going to be there. I mean, it's a machine. Like, it's never going anywhere. But you are making a transition. So um, find the time to take care of you and your family. Just take some time to soul search, find out who you want to be, what you want to do, and implement that plan, or start researching ways to implement your plan. So um, those are the 2 points I would probably push the hardest.
No, that's good you mentioned that because that's something that I wanted to clarify with my chain of command as I was transitioning on myself, letting them know, hey, look, I'm going to be out of pocket here for a little bit, out of the office, taking care of my own stuff. All right, going to
Got it.
the was it the IPAC section or the what's the IPAC in the Army? I'm not sure, like the admin section, or
Hmm.
going to Deers or whatever it is, just getting my stuff done for after, right? And what I was told, and I'm lucky to have had such a good chain of command that it was explained to me like, hey, look, with or without you, and the mission continues. It's kind of a blow
Absolutely.
to the gut, right? Like, y'all don't really need me, right? So, but it's also like, man, yeah, I got to get my stuff done. I got to get my affairs in order for my transition out. So, I quickly trained up the next guy in line. The one of my E6 and E7. I quickly trained them up on what I do, so they can be prepared to take over until my replacement comes.
Got it.
Right. But yeah, that
Absolutely.
is, man, it is a machine. You're right. The mission continues with or without you, and you got to make it clear. Like, I need to focus on myself right now because
Mhm.
it's going to come quick, and you need to be prepared. Absolutely.
Yeah, and the retirement process, and even just transitioning out and not retiring, is it's overwhelming. It's a fire hose, as we
It is.
would like to call it. It's a ton of information coming at you really, really quick. And as you mentioned, if you don't know the right questions to ask to begin with, then you may or may not ask those questions and may
Yeah.
or may not get the answers you need. So I think one of the questions as far as the transition itself, and this applies to anybody transitioning, is BDD. And it's a topic that I heard about just in passing as I was going through my, gathering my paperwork and putting things together. And I just happened to, bump into a colonel that I spoke with, and she had mentioned it. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. And I didn't remember hearing about it in the transition process as far as the TAP briefings were concerned. Maybe they mentioned it, maybe they didn't. But again, it's a fire hose of information. I just wanted to ask your personal experience with benefits delivery at discharge, if you did it, if you didn't do it, and if you did, what was that experience like, and anything that you can point out as pointers, tips, or tricks to that process.
So I will say the SFL TAP, or the Transitioning Center, did a really good job out of kind of getting me in direction of the BDD program. So that's one thing I do actually remember from transitioning out. So I did take part of that process. I know you cannot actually submit your information, or they can't submit your information to the VA until the day that you actually have retired or being discharged from the military. Process was really great. Like I said, I within 45 days, I had a rating from the day that I've actually took the uniform off. So my process with the BDD program was really great. I don't have anything negative to say about that process. So
yeah, my personal experience with it was trying to go through it, gathering the paperwork, getting it all scanned. It was just a maybe it was because it was during COVID and buildings were closed and offices were closed.
Yeah.
So really it was like you met every door that had a sign on it that said, if you need to contact us, please dial this number. If you need to email us, email this. So maybe that was part of the kind of stumbling blocks that I ran across, because at the end of the day, for whatever reason, my paperwork just didn't get pushed up and pushed to where it needed to go and get signed.
I can imagine it was tough.
Yeah, it was difficult. That, and then trying to gather 700 pages of documents, and they want you to send one page at a time to an email address. I'm like, that's insane to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say I as well had a great experience with the BDD process, right? It was, I put it on my calendar. I made sure that everything was on my calendar, right? Like I went in there too early, like 6 months out from my actual end of active service date. And they turned me away, saying, hey, you can only come in here 180 days to 90 days prior to your end of active service date for us to help you out. So at that point in time, I went in my calendar. Before I left the counter, I'm like, 180 days out, I'm coming back on that day. So yeah, definitely the calendar works, right? But I went in there, I submitted all my stuff. I went on about 3 months of terminal leave after my active end of active service date, which is December 1st. 11 days later, I had a rating. 11 days. So it works really quick. At least for me, it did. As long as all your stuff is in order and you don't open up like multiple documents or upload multiple documents for them to continue to review. I got all my medical documentation or all my medical appointments done within a 2-week period, which was, really, really quick. Like at least they want to schedule within a 2-week period. And then, 11 days after, got my rating, which was like, I was amazed. I was like, holy crap. Everybody else is talking about like years out, months out. 11 days is not bad.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I would suggest anyone that's transitioning out is you gotta take care of yourself again. So you want to make sure you keep the proper records. Anything medical, you need to start a file. And I would say, honestly, organize it, put it in different sections. Hey, this is for my hips. This is for my back. Like have it already set up so when you do file your claim, they don't have to do much looking. Like everything is there. They don't have to continue to call you and say, hey, I need this or that or some documents that's missing. So just kind of keep an idea, a log of everything that you want to claim. And that's going to make that process a lot smoother as well. So,
I've also heard when you go to like the medical appointments, they give you that medical sheet, right, where you have to explain like what hurts, when it was when you incurred that injury. Be as specific as possible with all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Because I had like follow-on pages because I was writing everything from like the date, my experience, when it happened, how often it hurts, how often I went to medical. That way it makes it easier for the doctor who is actually evaluating you to flip through your stuff. And I actually went in and I tabbed my stuff when I submitted it, and I took it to the doctor's office, and he was like, yeah, I'm reviewing your file here. I was like, well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I also brought those files and I have it tabbed, and it tells you exactly where you can find these dates and when all that stuff happened. So he's
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. Let me look at this, so, but it's like a 30-minute appointment, but that kind of expedited it and made it a little bit better for him, I think. And it showed him exactly where to look instead of, he's guessing maybe. Advocate for yourself, make sure that they have a tight group or a tight set of your documents, so that way they can give you the best rating possible if that's where
Absolutely.
if you rate that. Yeah.
So true.
So let me ask you if you had a specific legacy or some kind of impact you wanted to leave behind when you retired from the military. If so, what it was, and do you feel like you were able to leave that impact that you wanted to leave? And let me also tag onto that question an additional kind of expansion on it. Is there a legacy or some kind of impact you want to leave behind now because you're still actively working with military members? You're still connected to the military community. Is there an impact now that you realize that you want to leave behind, say 10 years, 20 years from now, whenever you're ready to actually retire and give it a break and hang everything up?
Yeah. So I'm amazed that you said 20 years from now. I'm trying to retire in 5 years. So,
You got 20
no.
years left, man.
So that conversation actually is, they both go with each other. Like they both kind of cohesive with each other. So the legacy I've left behind with the military is that Sergeant Byrd really cared about the people that he enlisted. Right. My focus was providing a service to not just putting people in uniform, but changing lives. Whether it was assisting someone with going to college or actually joining the military, and it's kind of the same thing I'm doing now. Just kind of continue to serve those that don't know, or just need a little bit more assistance with accomplishing their true goals, which is being successful or taking care of their family. So that's the legacy I've built for myself. Is that's the one I want to continue to work on until the day that I decide to stop working. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but
Oh yeah, totally. I like to leave long pauses in between. Uncomfortable 10-second pauses.
Let me see here. Yeah, when Romaine, I want to just jump on that real quick because the legacy thing was big for me. I felt like I needed to do something impactful on my way out as well. But I try to leave try to leave my mark somehow by creating systems and processes. But I just had to, my time here is done. I had to come to that conclusion, right? Like my uniform is coming off at some point. My time here is done. I need to focus on the next thing. And just, my next project was getting my resume done and getting, the next step, where am I going to live essentially? So though I wanted to leave an impact with my time in the military, I think all that stuff was done over the course of my career, right? I didn't want to do anything like last minute to like, hey, look, hey, I'm kind of like showboating, right? Hey, this is me on my way out. Now leave all that stuff where it is, focus on the next step. So a lot of folks do that with like trying to implement new plans and practices on the way out. I'm like, hey, don't be that guy, right? Don't be the good idea fairy who does that on the way out, because nobody likes that. Then they have to live with that until the next guy comes and changes it back or whatever, So no, I'm with you on that, man. Just transition out to your time. Don't try to implement new things or anything like that. Don't try to leave such a big legacy on the way out. Focus on your way out.
And I'm going to hit you with another hypothetical, and this kind of relates to, I guess, now you've discovered you have a little bit more time and space and freedom of movement now that you've retired. If you were to like if all the responsibilities were to fall to the wayside, I mean, of course you have to pay the bills and you have to feed the dogs and cats and kids. But everything else just kind of fell to the wayside. And maybe that's that 5-year mark that you're pushing for in your actual retirement. If all of that were to just fall away and you were just left with complete unobstructed time and resources, what would you be doing with that time?
I probably would be doing what I'm doing now. This is honestly, I think this is my God-given mission. I mean, and I'm not just saying that just because I'm on, online, but I really enjoy what I'm doing. Like this is because I grew up in a position where I didn't have. And the worst thing to me is someone that I can see that is experiencing what I've experienced. So I take this as a personal challenge. So I love what I do. I think I get more enjoyment out of someone finding work than like Christmas. So that's that's one of those things for me. So I would still kind of continue to sit in the same space I am now. If not here, with another organization. Even if I had to get out and do it on my own, I would still continue to want to serve the people.
No, that's
Let me ask,
admirable, man, because you have like that's almost like having the heart of the teacher, right? You want to continue passing on the knowledge that you've acquired over a certain time, and then help out
Got
the
it.
next generation, help out the next person, so the next veteran, right?
Yeah,
I think that's why John and I, and even you, Romaine, that's why I think we all do this, is to help out the next generation of folks who may or may not know what's available to them or their next
absolutely.
path in life. It does feel good to help out the next person. So I'm 100% on board with that, man. It's great to see somebody who is asking for assistance and see them succeed after you've lent a helping hand. 100%.
Yeah, it's actually definitely one of the reasons to do this, to sit down and take the time on the weekends, to take the time during the week, to take the time to edit, to post, to produce all this stuff. Because, I mean, not only is it an attributing to highlighting your journey and your career and your military service and what you're doing beyond that, actually creating a time capsule for you, for your family, for your great grandchildren, but also just putting out your information out there to potentially help one other person along
Absolutely.
their same journey. So yeah, I agree with that. Let me ask you about mentors and mentorship, as far as any mentors that you can point to, or maybe one or two specific people you can point to who have greatly impacted your life as a kind of mentor. Maybe they weren't officially a mentor, but in that kind of mentor position. And how do you feel about mentorship moving forward now that you're the more experienced one down the path?
Great question. So I I didn't have a mentor, honestly, my whole military career, especially when I reached the rank of sergeant as a recruiter. I knew what I didn't. I had some really bad leaders, and I just kind of gauged on what they did, and I just kind of branded myself to not want to be what that was. I do think mentorship or being a mentor is super important. Like it goes a long way. And honestly, that's what I strive to do every day now is be somebody's beacon of hope or beacon of light to kind of get them through that process. But it's not because I had the great leadership. It's I've had the wrong leadership that put me in a spot where I didn't want to be that person. So experience, good experience or bad experience, it's all an experience. And you learn something from each of those. So and that's just my position. Like I mold myself out of what I didn't want to be.
So, Romaine, do you find that you being in your position now as a Hire Heroes USA person or employee, do you find that or that folks reach out to you as you being one of their mentors?
Absolutely. And I get a lot of guys that I recruited 10, 12, 13 years ago that are still calling me now. They're getting ready to make that transition out. And they're calling me now still for assistance. I'm still getting a lot of the guys' mom that I put in reaching out. Hey, Sergeant Byrd. And I'm like, hey, I'm not Sergeant Byrd now. But they're still reaching out for assistance or for guidance with their kid or somebody else's kid. So, I love that part about it, and that to me means more than an actual paycheck.
Oh, absolutely. you're helping them out.
If you could go back and have a conversation with, say, your 16-year-old self, and I picked 16-year-old self because it's a very specific point in time. It's like midway through high school. You're starting to become an adult. You're starting to be more observational about the future of your life, the choices that you're going to be making once you get past high school, college, and career and things like that. You start to actually formulate those ideas in your mind around
Got it.
that time. Plus, you're very impressionable and moldable at that age. But if you could go back and just sit down and meet up with yourself at that age or somewhere close to that age, could you give us like a time and a place where this meeting may occur? And what are some of the things you might talk about? Of course, excluding things like, invest in Apple stock and invest in Bitcoin and things like that. But anything specifically you might go back and talk to yourself about for 20, 30 minutes?
All right. Yeah. So, I shared that I grew up in a weird spot, right? Very impoverished neighborhood, just kind of bouncing around from place to place. I think the conversation I would have with my 16-year-old self is just kind of hold tight. Continue doing what you're doing. I was very limited to having access of, just information. I think I wouldn't change anything, right? I would just kind of tell the 16-year-old self, my 16-year-old self, is just kind of hold tight and continue to just look forward, because it does get better. Again, all experiences, whether they're good and bad, are something you can take away and learn from. So, and I think that as a kid, I went through some really bad things. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change what I've been through, and I definitely would not change the current outcome or the current situation that I'm sitting now. So I think everything is divine purpose. It took my struggle to make somebody else's life okay, and I'm all right with that. So I wouldn't change a thing. I would just have a conversation with myself, just trying to continue to drive on. There is a purpose.
Yeah, that's huge, man. I was just thinking about that this whole weekend. How if I would have known what I knew now, or if I would have known earlier in life what I knew now, I would not be stressing out so much about the whole retirement thing. Right at my 15-year mark, 18-year mark, I'm trying to figure out where the heck am I going to live? How am I going to survive? How am I going to give whatever to my family? Have my family live, where we're going to live, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
If I would have known that everything was going to be okay, it would have been such a relief from my shoulders. Right.
Yeah.
So Romaine, with that, so you being in the Hire Heroes USA position, I'm sure you mentioned you talked to a lot of folks. What is the biggest question, or the most repetitive question that you receive, if any, from folks looking for services through Hire Heroes USA, looking for your input?
I think salary may be the biggest. How much money should I ask for? Is my experience actually going to be valued in the civilian sector? I think that's the biggest. Again, having that conversation. Every veteran I talk to, mostly their starting salary is, hey, I want to make $50,000. I want to just make what I was making to kind of cover the difference of what I'm making in the military. And you sell yourself short so much, So I think that is the biggest question.
And that's their go-to number, is the 50,000 for whatever reason,
50.
Just because it's like an even number.
Absolutely. And I think it makes up the difference from their retirement to what they were making, so 50 grand is like that magical number. So you just got to make them see their value and their worth, and just kind of redirect them to, a pay chart, or, Glassdoor, some of the tools that are used to kind of help you with your salary. Right.
No, that's good, because I've also encountered something like that, where folks are reaching out to me, because I work for an organization, a company that works with the Navy, and they're always recruiting people. It's a contract position, right? They're always recruiting people, and folks ask me, hey, where are you working at? Like the other people I've worked with, who are transitioning out, and I give them the website. I tell them, hey, look, here's the jobs available, and they kind of sell themselves short too. Like, oh man, I don't know how to do any of that stuff. I'm like, dude, but
Mm.
I got in here, I thought the same thing,
Yeah.
and I'm working here now, so
Yeah.
a lot of it is the companies need to know that you're willing to learn. Like
Absolutely.
that's basically it, And some of them have like a little blurb at the bottom of the employment, the actual job description that says, if you're willing to learn, we'd like you to apply. So I 100% was willing to learn. During my interview, I didn't know half the things that they were asking me during my interview, but I said, hey, look, I figured things out harder than this in my time. I'm telling you that I will figure this out as well. And along with my education, along with my experience, it does help that we have 20 years of experience in a certain thing, in the military. Leadership goes a long way, the experience goes a long way. But if you are willing to learn and open yourself up, and you're not, you don't have those horse blinders on, and you only know that one thing. I'm a drill sergeant or drill instructor, and I know how to lead. No, that's not really leading. That's telling
Yeah.
people what to do, and they're mindlessly doing it, right? You need to effectively learn how to lead an organization. If you're open to learning that, then folks will talk to you, and folks will consider
Definitely.
your resume over others.
Yeah, as far as that's concerned, is there a job agnostic or a skill agnostic thing that you would recommend to anybody to maybe do some research on, or if it's like a certification, like a PMP or something like that, or even a book that you may recommend that was something that would be a great primer for anybody, and really just job agnostic, like doesn't matter what career path they're going down, something that would really kind of help them center and be able to figure some of those hard questions out, like who am I, what do I want to do, what's my purpose, anything like that?
I honestly wouldn't recommend a book. I mean, if you're like me, the last thing you want to do is pick up a book when you're transitioning out, right? The best experience is actually talking to someone that has transitioned. Go to your local VFW, go to the places where veterans meet, and have those one-on-one conversations. I think that's the best, because you're getting real world information right on the spot. There's no trickery, there's no guesswork, and they would just kind of give you the details, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. Find someone that you could, use as a beacon. Find a mentor. That information, I don't think you can actually necessarily get out of a book, because the world is just not so scripted. So no, I wouldn't recommend a book. That's just me though.
Right.
I'm more of a hands-on person type anyway.
So if from the hands-on perspective, is there any like I know you just completed some really good training. It's probably higher level training, but anything like because I know a lot of people are leaning towards like a PMP or a project management certification, or even like an agile Scrum certification. And those are really kind of job agnostic. Those are more about being able to manage project assets and project dependencies and things like that. Anything that you can think of that would be really like a first step, first foot forward action that you would recommend to anybody who's maybe doesn't know what they want to do, and they've been an 88 mic, which is basically a truck driver for the last 20 years, something like that.
So I don't really suggest like say this. I suggest those certifications if that's what you want to do. Maybe going to management, going to leading, but for those that just want to kind of provide for their families, that don't want to kind of, lead an organization, you got to find a different avenue of approach to kind of accomplish that goal. Those certifications are really tough, and I think you should only do those if you are committed to that cause. Again, no, I would just say, do some soul searching yourself, find out what it is that you want to do, find a mentor, get with one of our counselors, and let us walk you through that process, and then decide. Now, I would say if you are wanting to continue your service, continue what you're doing and while you're in the military, if you're an 88 Mike and you say, hey, look, I want to go out and continue to drive trucks, then build your portfolio based on that training. Find that training. If you want to do supply, same thing. Find the procurement and logistic courses that you can take. The PMP and those Six Sigma, Lean Belt Six Sigma courses, those are really complicated, training. So I would say don't grab it unless you really want it. And it all depends on what that person wants to do, so I know I don't have a desire to be up level management, so I just want to kind of continue to do what I'm doing.
I should have talked to you before I started doing anything on my way out, man, because I did not know what I wanted to do. So I went and
Yeah.
got that Lean Six Sigma green belt, and then, the yellow belt, the green belt. And then I'm looking around. I'm like, I went and started doing my PMP certification stuff. And then, I was kind of all over the place, dude. And
Yeah.
because I didn't know, I didn't know what I wanted to get into. I was
Yeah.
like, I just knew that I didn't want to do my MOS anymore, my military occupational specialty anymore, because I've been doing it for 20 years. I needed a change, and I didn't know. I even went to the warehouses on base, talked to the master sergeant there, and kind of built a little rapport with him, and asked him, hey, look, can I get my forklift certification? Because maybe I want to be a forklift driver for Walmart after I get out or something. I'm tapping into everything here, and what I'm doing now has zero to do with any of that stuff. So it's, by trial and error, I had to figure it out, but it is good to kind of attach yourself to somebody. And like you mentioned, go to those veterans organizations, or be around different veterans, right? Network and figure out, hey, look, folks with like-minded, skills, or like skills, if you're a mechanic, or if you're a truck driver, go surround yourself with folks like that if that's what you want to do. And then you figure out, hey, look, what's the next step and what I want to do. Like there's, was it VRNE, right? The service where you can get certifications in the military without using your GI Bill. They give you certifications in cybersecurity, right? A lot of them are in cybersecurity, some human resources. A lot of folks that I'm seeing, a lot of veterans are getting out, they're attaching themselves for some reason to cybersecurity. And I'm like, dude, you have no desire, based on what we're talking about, you have zero desire to want to do that. You just see the numbers in the sky and what it could possibly be, but your life is going to be miserable because you don't like that stuff. You want to be outside, and then you're doing cybersecurity where you're on a computer all day. So it's a little tough, but you got to play that game and figure out what exactly you want to do, and be honest with yourself, because if you don't want to be sitting behind a computer the whole time, maybe don't get a cybersecurity, certification.
Absolutely.
Be completely honest with yourself.
I've had the conversation more than once. I will get a client call me and say, hey, I don't know what I want to do. How can you help me? And it's like, you've known you more than I've known you. So I can't answer that question for you. You have to take that time to kind of think for yourself and just have that conversation with you and say, hey, look, this is what I don't like to do. Once you establish what you don't want to do, it's a little bit easier conversation with yourself to say, all right, well, I will do this. But you gotta take that time to invest in yourself and have that conversation with yourself about, your next steps in your life, because nobody can answer that question for you, so.
Right. Yeah, that's huge. What don't you want to do? Because if you're doing what you don't want to do, you're going to be miserable, and everybody around you, your family, everybody's going around you is going to feel it. Right. So yeah, that's huge, man. I'm glad you mentioned that, because a lot of folks are latching themselves onto these things that they think is going to make them a good amount of money, but that's that's not what their calling is. It simply isn't.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and prime example, I work for a nonprofit. So, I could probably went to a company making a buttload more money, but I would be miserable. I would be unhappy. So I'm in the space I'm supposed to be in. And again, at that point, money doesn't really answer that internal happiness, so.
Right. You found your calling.
Don't chase.
That's what it is.
Absolutely. Don't chase the dollar. Don't chase the dollar.
Yeah, and if I could unpack that just a tiny little bit more, as far as you sitting down and figuring out what it was you actually wanted to do, and obviously it's not a monetarily driven decision for you, which is actually, in my perspective, the better way to go, is not focusing on the money and focusing on what you actually feel like you can do for the next 5 or 10 or 15 years, because that's what you're going to be doing. Regardless of what the money is. How did you actually get to the point where you decided, like, hey, this is my calling, this is my purpose, this is what I feel like is the right thing for me to do, even though it's maybe a little bit less money than if I went to work for some Fortune 500 company or something that I could actually get into and I'm actually qualified for, but I chose this path instead? Is there Was there like a mental conversation that you had with yourself about that when you made that decision to start working with Hire Heroes USA?
Well, yeah, I think it goes back a little deeper than that. I think it does go back to that 16-year-old me, who didn't have the guidance, who didn't have the money, didn't have the purpose, didn't have the direction. Um, it just so happened I joined the military to get out of that situation. I think as I kind of progressed in the rank and became a recruiter, I saw the enjoyment out of helping people that was in the same spot I am again. And I think it's just transition and just kind of continue to flow once I retired. High Heroes USA was just the catalyst to kind of continue to push what I had going. I had a really good transition specialist with High Heroes USA myself, and I knew the way he talked to me and the way he assisted me with my employment search. I just want to continue that mission. So um, I think it's all full circle for me.
That's really good.
Hey,
Let me
Romaine, real
ask
quick.
you. Oh, go ahead.
Something that just popped in my head real quick. So I was recently asked. So I went home for New Year's, right? I was recently asked by one of my family members, folks that were interested, younger folks who were interested in getting my perspective, because one of them were, interested in joining I think it was the Navy, and some of the other folks that were around in that circle are asking, hey, look, would you recommend people nowadays, right now in 2024, join the military? And my response, and I'm curious to know what your response is, but my response was absolutely, because even if it's 4 years, you get a job, you get job security, you get job on the job training, and on the way out, you get benefits as well. So it can only, I believe firmly that it could only help you, even if you only did 4 years. I'm curious to know what your perspective is, like somebody in 2024. This is like on the backside, because right now your position with Higher Heroes USA is helping folks transition out. But as far as transitioning into the military, what is your position on that? Do you recommend folks to join the military nowadays in 2024?
Man, I'm only smiling because I promise you, this is real. I've enlisted my sister, I've enlisted my niece, and two
Yeah.
of my nephews in the military. So
Okay.
I'm
I think I know your answer.
100%. So, and that's the
Well,
thing.
you're a
Like, I
recruiter
can't
too.
tell you, I was a recruiter. So, like, they hate coming in my house because I'm like, hey, you should join the military. So, the thing of it is, you know, it may not work for everybody, but I know what worked for me, right? And I knew
Mhm.
that the military was something that actually, I honestly say, saved my life. Um, so of course, I'm gonna continue to talk this talk as long as I can, because it got me out of the situation I was in, and I've seen it help so many other people. So
Right.
yeah, join now. Yeah, listen, I wish they could put me on a commercial. I'll sell it because this
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
it works.
It
So
does. It does. No, I'm glad you mentioned that, man. I like that position, because even looking back at it now, uh, looking now at how it has helped me and my family. I'm like, man,
mm,
I would love it if, like, my kids, at least even 4 years, join the military.
yeah,
And I preach the same thing to anybody I meet. I'm like, it can only help you, I think.
yeah,
It doesn't mean join the military doesn't mean that you need to be, on the front lines. It doesn't mean that you need to do any of that stuff. Everything is computer based now. Learn a skill, learn a trade. If you're into like
got it.
cybersecurity, if you're into like, uh, cyber warfare, things like that. If you want to learn about that stuff, it can only help you. And on the way out, you acquire a skill that you can use on the civilian side. So you prepare yourself. On top of that, you get educational benefits. There's so much that comes with it. It can only help out folks these days. So I'm
Well,
glad that's your answer, man.
the current market we're living in 2024, there's studies that show that there's more benefit of actually getting a trade now than sitting in a college classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And like you mentioned, get that trade where you can only be successful, do a few years and get out and use that trade that you've gotten. So whether
Yeah.
it's in IT or plumbing, like it is probably more beneficial than sitting there getting a psychology degree. Um,
Right.
so join.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, plus you're pre-filling the client base as well, because you get them
Absolutely.
in and then you get them back out in 4 years and you get to
Absolutely.
transition them out.
It's
Gotta
job security
gotta
on my
keep.
part.
That's right. Yes. 100%. So let me ask you about a thing that's very near and dear to my heart, and just very near and dear to Victor's heart as well, I believe, and something that we talk about a whole bunch. And I guess it comes out organically through how we talk and how we distribute and how we put this out there in the world. But as far as personal branding and how it leads to successful transition, successful next career, or successful personal journey for your own business or anything like that, how do you feel about personal brand? And depending on how you feel about personal brand, do you recommend or have any suggestions for anybody out there who hasn't ever thought of this question or hasn't ever thought about personal branding at all?
I do think personal branding is super important. You know, not only from a business standpoint, but from a networking standpoint. You know, who you are and what you kind of feed out to the universe is going to, it's going to carry along in whatever you do, your future endeavors. So, um, you know, you want to market yourself. You want to go out and let the world know who you are. Um, and again, we did a study, our organization, every person knows at least 5 people. So the more people you can tell your story to or brand yourself personally is only going to benefit you in the long run. So, yeah, I'm 100% on board with that. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So along with personal branding, I think you need to be, a lot of folks need to be able to concisely and effectively explain themselves, kind of like the elevator pitch, right? Tell a little bit
mhm.
about yourself within a 30-second, time frame. And that's something that, I was taught. I used to go to like public speaking courses and things like that. And that was huge, right? Like how do you market yourself? How do you sell yourself within the 30-second time frame, right? If you're in an elevator with somebody, how do you tell them about yourself and what you can provide them or how you can help them out within the 30-second time frame? So I think that's huge too. A lot of folks don't know exactly how to do that. And I think that's a practiced art, like
It is a practice art.
don't
Yeah,
encompass everything you've ever done, just the wave tops. Here's what I can do for you. Here's what I know. And that serves well in interviews too. Like, why should we hire you? Well, here's why you should hire me. I have such experience. This is what I bring to the table within a concise time frame. I think that's huge too. And is that something that Hire Heroes USA provides, like interviewing tips or anything like that?
yeah, absolutely. So those were the 2 hardest questions that I had to answer. Like something is, hey, tell me something about yourself and why should we hire you? Why should we hire you? Like I could never talk about myself. Those questions to me was just like the question of death. Once I was asked that, the interview was over. So it is a practice skill. Hire Heroes USA, will assist you with that process. We normally tell you to have something ready 7 to 8 seconds. On an elevator. What you can tell somebody about yourself within 7 to 8 seconds. Just give them a really quick idea of who you are, what you can bring to the table, and then give them your business cards or your resume. But yeah, so we do offer that service, and we'll walk you through that process until the day that you say, hey, look, I found my offer letter. I've signed my offer letter. So
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, there's a lot of folks that don't know how to do that or not well versed in that. I'm glad that, though I have not used that, the interviewing stuff with Hire Heroes USA, I'm glad to hear that it is like a one-stop shop for everything you need on the transition out. That's awesome.
absolutely.
Yeah, and even if you want to take it to the extremes, like if you really, really want to dial it in, spend an afternoon or even a couple hours and sit down and see if you can summarize your elevator pitch into like 7 or 8 words into one sentence. Because then you start to really like shave off the fat and cut the corners on everything and just condense everything down into one sentence. That's super, super difficult. But if you go through that exercise and actually do it, and then you can expand it from there and create it into what you want it to be. But yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough to talk about yourself when you spend a lot of time not talking about yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Or you're very,
Absolutely.
very humble and, just randomly talk about yourself.
Yeah.
So
All you want
a
to do is
good
just
way to
spark
practice
interest.
that. No, I was going to say a good way to practice that is, and I do this all the time, and when I go out with my wife, she hates it. She's like, "What are you doing?" We'll go to Starbucks. We'll go out to eat or something, and I'll just randomly practice my stuff, right? And like the waiter's like, "Why is this guy telling me this?" I'm like, "Hey, how you doing? Here, my name's so and so." Just like. So it's a very low stakes situation because you don't really have to sell yourself to these people or anything like that, but you can practice getting that information out. You might seem like a weirdo, but it's practice. It's practice.
So I'll just ask you if you've got any additional thoughts, advice, or anything that we haven't covered yet so far that you'd like to share, or if there's anything else that you've got, Victor, that you might want to throw in and ask.
Let me see here. I got a whole booklet of notes here. Let me see. No, I think we covered a lot, man. I appreciate you, talking about your final moves and your whole career, man. I appreciate that. You mentioned you were burned out after 75 to 80 hours a week, in the military. And I understand that completely because that's similar to what I've done. And after a while, I felt completely burned out. And now, based on what your feedback and all that, it seems like you're at a place where you want to be, right? Not completely burned out. You got a good mindset going on. Your mind is clear. Your family's good. You found where you want to live and all that stuff. So, I completely, I'm in the same boat after the whole military move and after the entire transition. No longer am I working 80 hours a week. Plus, now it's like I don't bring work home. That's huge. I don't get calls on the weekend. So I'm sure that was something you were probably you were at E7 when you got out, E8, E7. Yeah, I'm sure I'm sure you got calls from on the weekends from like knucklehead soldiers who are like doing random stuff. Yeah. No longer is that a thing, right? That's not part of your mission anymore. And the next mission is helping folks transition out. So no, I completely appreciate. No, I got nothing right now, but I completely appreciate you sharing your story with me, with us.
Oh, thank you.
And anything that you got, Romaine, that we may not have touched on or talked about, or anything that you want to kind of circle back on?
I would just say, for anybody that's considering transitioning or in the process of transitioning, you only got one time to do it right. You only get one chance to transition from the military. Use every tool that you possibly can to make that transition successful. Don't hesitate. Don't wait. Don't think that the military is going to take care of you once you take that uniform off, because they're not. You have to do what it takes for your survival of you and your family. So, everybody's goal in life is self-preservation. So, do what you got to do. Do your research and make your transition successful. There's enough organizations out here to help you with that. So just do your research and utilize what's in front of you to make that transition successful. So
yeah, you're absolutely right. Use all the tools you got and grind it out until you get past the point of being past the transition and into your next journey in life.
Yeah.
Let me wrap it up and see if there's anywhere that you would point people to, any links that you want to point to that we can throw down in the show notes of where to find you, how to contact Hire Heroes USA if they need to, or anything like that.
Oh, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I promise you, there's only one Romaine Byrd on LinkedIn. So you can look me up on LinkedIn, or you could go to our website, which is hireheroesusa.org, or just Google Hire Heroes USA. Don't get confused with the other organizations like Hire Our Heroes, USAA. There's so many organizations that are helping veterans, but us specifically, I can attest to the great work that we do. So
awesome.
Yeah, and I can as well, being a long-time customer of you guys.
Thank you.
So thank you for taking the time out. We appreciate you spending time with us, and thanks everybody else out there for listening in for the show. If you need to find us, we are on all the podcast platforms. We're on YouTube, and we are also on Wreaths Across America at 11 p.m. on Wednesday evenings. You can catch us there. And until next time, we will talk to you all later. Thank you very much.
Sure.